There's something going on. Crowd loving it. It's a ball, fly ball. Home run!
2, 1. Without the NHL, NBA usually falls second for me, third behind NFL. Without the NHL, I like to follow the Raptors. I think it's going to be exciting. The Raptors should be a young, exciting team this year, based on everything you've been selling for the last year and a half. So it should be a really exciting season, I think, with the NBA, and they're going to get a ton of press up here.
They will. Now, let me quickly go through the roster, why I like it so much. Now, a couple of years ago, they drafted Jonas Valanciunas. Now, Valanciunas wasn't able to play last year. He played in Lithuania, had a contract there. Now, I remember the draft, and I said right away, I was right on it. I said, that's the guy I wanted before the draft. They drafted him. The fan base here didn't know much about him. They just thought he was another European. That's been a common theme for us up in Toronto. But
people were worried about another Brazilian draft pick that I won't mention.
But once people saw him play, and they heard the American media talk about him and say, no, this guy's the real deal, people started getting very excited about him, right?
Mm-hmm.
The people were able to spend a full year watching him in Europe, see that he was dominating his own age group, was the MVP of the Under-19 FIBA World Championships. He was the best player at his age group, bar none, American or not. We drafted him 5th overall in the 2010 NBA draft. Wasn't able to come last year. Going to this year's draft, we had the 8th overall pick. We picked Terrence Ross. That's a shot in the dark in my opinion as well, but I mean he could give you some good off the bench minutes this year. He's a good shooter, can play some defense, is long.
Right, well, they've got him penciled in as this right now the starting shooting guard.
No, he would be coming off the bench. That would be my opinion. Valanciunas would have been the 2nd overall pick in this year's draft, and a lot of people like this draft. They had Thomas Robinson, Harrison Barnes, Austin Rivers. You had a lot of great players. I mean, Anthony Davis was the clear number 1 guy, but they said Valanciunas would have been right behind him if he had been in this draft. We got him 5th in the year previous. And a lot of people are saying now he should have been drafted higher,
right?
And that in his own year of draft.
This is again we're going off on a little bit here, but my concept of this guy is he's not a banger. My thoughts are the NBA is past the great big huge centers who sit in the hoop and swat balls away like a Dwight Howard and a Shaq and all that stuff. Those kind of big bulky centermen are no longer coming out in force. Not that there was a lot of them to begin with, but they were the guys they wanted. They wanted just a big body to stand under their hoop and they could post off of. Valanciunas is thinner. Now they're saying he is going to fill out a bit, but I guess what I've seen and heard is that he's a little more of a banger than Bargnani would have been under the hoop. And this will allow Bargnani to play more naturally where he's suited, which is more of a shooting game.
Yeah. Valanciunas right now is about 7 foot tall. He's about 257 in terms of pounds. Now, that's a little bit lean for a centerman, but as a 20-year-old, that's not bad. He will progress into a bigger center. In every single team, when you look down the line who have won the championships, they've always had a big, strong center who has done well. If you look at Shaq, you look at Dwight Howard, even though Dwight Howard never won a championship, he always made Orlando a team to be afraid of because he was just that big and that talented. David Robinson, Tim Duncan. You look at the big men, if you have a talented big man, it all of a sudden makes you a contender.
And this kid isn't one-dimensional, right? I mean, that's the other thing, is if you have one of these one-dimensional centers, they're no good.
Right. This guy loves to pick and roll, loves to play defense, loves the rebound. This guy is a prototypical centerman, and that's why people are excited about him. If you look at the ESPN rankings on him, they said right away he has a star potential at center, which is exactly why, if you look at what I just suggested to you, when you look at the teams that have been prototypical, the teams to beat, they've always had a star, legit center.
Well, and I guess sort of what I've heard about this kid as well is that he's not a Charles Oakley under the boards where he's going to go in there and throw elbows and bang, 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 but that he has more of an edge to him, more of a chip on his shoulder than Bargnani does or did. That this kid will muck it up a bit under the boards, and that's, to me, what you need is somebody who's able to do that. I mean, like I said, the Oakleys of the world are gone. I mean, the NBA has changed enough, but they're not going to allow guys under the hoops and just hammer on each other. So to me, this guy seems like if he's got a bit of an edge in there, that's great, because the Raptors have been missing that since Oakley.
It's absolutely true, but you got to also remember, if you look at Bargnani, who is probably our best player, if you talk about what the intangibles that Valanciunas brings to the court, Well, that's a perfect compliment for Bargnani.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Bargnani's not your banger, but he's definitely far improved from what we saw him a couple years ago. He's playing better defense. He's grabbing some more rebounds.
He's driving to the hoop more too. He's going.
And in the end,
he's putting the ball down.
And in the end, he's scoring a lot of points.
Yeah.
What you need is a guy who can complement him, help him on defense if needed, help him get some rebounds if needed. Well, this is the guy you got. All of a sudden, you got this guy who can probably double every night, even if he gets 10 and 15 or something. That's exactly what you need in terms of a guy in the front court, right? You add in DeMar DeRozan, who hopefully this year can turn his game into a more of a well-rounded game. He's been a bad with the ball handling. Mm-hmm. He can score some points, doesn't get a lot of rebounds, doesn't get a lot of points. Now, he was able to play this year with the American Olympic team as part of the youth movement that they had coming up, so hopefully that progresses him further. He should be the starting shooting guard, followed by Terrence Ross, who we spoke about earlier.
So you've got DeMar DeRozan at guard.
Yeah,
now, he's naturally a guard. Now I was looking online here, and they have him listed as small forward.
He's capable of playing small forward, but he's about 6'7". Landry Fields is about the same size, but I think Landry Fields is better suited to play a small forward position. So I would suggest to you that Landry Fields would be your starting small forward, followed by Lance Kleza. You could have time to time when Ross is getting more seasoned into the NBA, that you might have Ross at your shooting guard and be able to move DeMar to your small forward. Mm-hmm. At that point, then you're going maybe a little bit younger team, but you're probably going with a little bit more dynamic players, right? Then you have your point guard situation where we picked up Kyle Lowry from the Houston Rockets in the offseason trade. You combine him with very capable second guard in Calderon, who on many teams would probably be the starting point guard. We had him as a starting point guard last year. Mm-hmm. I mean, you consider that Calderon now would be playing against second point guards in the league. That's pretty dangerous because you can see what his stats prove what he did last year against starting point guards.
Yeah.
What is he going to do against second tier point guards, right?
Well, and this has been an issue with the Raptors for several years. Is their second squad has been, well, the first squad hasn't been the best going out there anyway, and then their second squad tends to fall off quite a bit. But if what you're saying here, if we go over the depth chart here with Bargnani as your starting power forward, Valanciunas at center, and you were saying Landry Fields starting at small forward.
Yeah, because if you look at
DeMar DeRozan at shooting guard and then Kyle Lowry at point guard.
If you look at that roster, and you look at why Fields fits better in at small forward, well, Fields isn't looking to score. What he's looking to do is give you some good hard minutes, good defense, get some rebounds, get some assists. That's what your Fields is looking for, your small forward, right? Mm-hmm. DeMar DeRozan can score. Valanciunas right now probably is not looking to get a lot of points, but he can definitely rebound, block some shots, play some good defense. Lowry's going to look to create and score, and Bargnani's a big scorer.
Right.
So small forward, you don't need necessarily a guy who can score that much. You look at your second unit, you got Calderon coming off the bench,
right,
big time assist guy. You got Ross, who's able to be a young guy, good young shooter. Calderon can look for him. You can move Kleza to your small forward. If you look what he did in the Olympics, a year from his knee injury, that guy was scoring a lot of points in the Olympics.
You got Amir
Johnson, probably
in the middle.
He can probably play center, and he may not get a lot of points, but he can definitely play hard minutes. Mm-hmm. And then I think a young Ed Davis, this could be his year where he really turns around and really becomes something to be reckoned with. He averaged a lot of double doubles last year, and he goes to your power forward spot. I think at that point you have a legitimate 10 guys who can play the game of basketball, and I think that makes your team better.
And what I see on the outside of that right now is that leaves out Quincy Acy, who looked pretty good in Summer League, from what I saw. Now, again, I'm not a big baller, so don't know for sure, but Quincy Acy looked interesting to me.
Here's the thing.
He looked like a real banger on there.
Quincy Acy is not your stereotypical power forward star. Mm-hmm. He is what we had a couple years ago in Reggie Evans, in terms of he's a banger, he's a hustler, gives you the hard minutes, right?
Yeah.
But this year, as a rookie, he comes in and he's going to play on his team, and he probably won't see a lot of minutes. But what he will do is he will force your Amir Johnsons, your Ed Davis, your Aaron Gray, your Valanciunas, your Bargnani to work harder in practice to make sure they keep their minutes, because Quincy Acy will work his butt off in practice and make those guys better players because he's working so hard.
I was going to say, he seems like a real energy guy off the bench.
Yeah.
You know, when the crowd needs to get in there, he can go out there and hammer some people around. That also leaves Alan Anderson off on the bench. John Lucas, at this point, from what I saw on the depth chart, as the third point guard. And is it Dominic McGuire?
Yeah, Dominic McGuire. Now, Dominic McGuire is probably going to be your last man on the roster. Where you could have a Jamal McGlure who also has a guaranteed contract. I think he's more, Dominic McGuire is going to be let go, or he'll be the 15th man on the roster, and McGlure will get some sort of coaching position on the roster. The Allen Anderson is there just as I think, played well last year, gives us another guy who can play either small forward or shooting guard. And John Lucas did very well last year with Chicago when Rose went down, but gives you an option if one of your two first point guard, Lowry or Calderon, go down. Gives Lucas as a good backup point guard for one of those two. Or if you're looking to trade Calderon midway through the season, then it gives you an option there to have, you don't have to necessarily trade for another point guard.
And then on the roster we also have, currently we have another centerman, Aaron Gray. We also have, you mentioned McGlure, we have Gerald McNeil's been signed, you have Chris Wright, and you have, is it Zubchik?
Yeah. In the end, Aaron Gray is going to be the one who sees minutes out of any of those guys. I think all the rest of those guys will be let go. Gray did start a couple games last year for us. At the end of the year, a lot of games for us. I think Gray will be a good mentor to Valanciunas. He can supply some minutes if Valanciunas gets into some foul trouble. I think Gray will be a guy where if Amir Johnson maybe isn't strong enough or big enough to handle the centerman, Aaron Gray is the guy you're going to see coming in after Valanciunas and give you minutes as a sort of a rebounder, under the basket type defender that will complement Bargnani, not as well as Valanciunas, but enough that they can get by.
So, you've been talking to me for 2 years about, since Valanciunas was drafted, and since some of these young guys were around. I guess it wasn't 2 years; it was after Valanciunas was drafted, about this squad and about the potential of this squad. And now looking at it, you're excited about this roster.
I'm getting excited about the roster. I think there's definitely still some holes, but I think looking at this roster, it's very young, it's very talented. I think honestly what they're probably lacking at this point is a true veteran guy who can get them over the hump. Where, like, if you remember when Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady here, now I don't know if we necessarily have a Vince Carter or Tracy McGrady on the roster, but they brought in Oakley, they brought in Antonio Davis to sort of steer them in a way where they were going to progress. Mm-hmm. I think with this roster, because Calderon has only played for the Raptors, the Raptors have not been good. That's not the veteran leadership necessary that you might need. No, I don't believe that Calderon's a thorn in any way or a distraction in any way. I think Calderon's a great guy, a great teammate, can lead them to some great heights. But I think they're missing a guy who probably has been there before and can show them or teach them to get there. I think that's the only thing they're probably missing at this point, because I think the rest of the roster is very young, very talented, and has only upside to go.
So who are you looking forward to watch this year on this roster? Who's somebody you're really excited to watch this year?
Well, if you look at it, if Valanciunas is the guy I'm really excited about, you might be surprised by who I'm about to say, because a lot of people would say Lowry because I'm very excited to see him play point guard. Some people might say Ross because they saw him in the summer league, or they might say Valanciunas. I'm very excited to see where Bargnani has progressed to, because last year when he started the season, and I don't know if people remember this or even gave this consideration, when Bargnani was in the lineup for the first 15 games, he was averaging 24 points a game. The Raptors at that point were 7-8. Then he got injured, and he was pretty much injured for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm. Calf injury.
We're talking about a roster that's not even near as good as this roster is right now, and they were 7-8.
Yeah.
If Bargnani can produce even close to what he did last year, or from the expectations that I've heard, that I've been given that Bargnani is actually better than he was last year, if Bargnani can overstep what he did started last year, he's the guy I'm most excited about, because he's really, if you look at everybody else on this roster, he's the guy who's capable of being an all-star in this league. And if he can be an all-star in this league, I think this roster gets us in the playoffs.
Really? Toronto wants to see that. Toronto needs a playoff team very, very badly in this city. I'm interested in Terrence Ross. I watched him in the summer league. I listened to some of the commentary on him when he was playing. To me, he could be good, and this is coming from a hardcore basketball fan, just a casual observer more than anything else. He interests me a lot. I also like the style of play of Linus Kleza. I like that banger, gritty guy, and I saw a bit of that in Quincy Acy. So I'll be a guy I'll definitely be watching for Acy when he comes off the bench and gets his couple of minutes per game to see what kind of energy he builds. And to me, I like a team with depth. I really do. And so the fact that you're kind of hyped about this second squad.
Well, even Brian
interesting.
Colangelo has suggested himself. If you remember the team that had when Calderon first came here and they brought over Garbajosa, well, that team was very deep. It had almost 10 players, right? That's what he's suggesting with this team. And if you look at the roster, he's right. There is a lot of depth everywhere. And I think if I were you, and I'm coming knowing what type of players you like, the guy you should be most looking forward to is their new point guard, is Kyle Lowry. That guy is a little bulldog, and I think he's going to be right up your alley in terms of how you like your players to play in Toronto. I think Kyle Lowry is the guy. I think for you, you're going to be most excited to watch, and I think you're going to be very hyped to see him play basketball.
Well, I can't wait for preseason, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't watch, because usually there's hockey on and NFL. I don't get to see a lot of NBA preseason games, but this season, that's all we're going to see for the next little while is NBA preseason. So I think we're going to be able to see some of these guys, and hopefully the Raptors get a nice bump, a nice pop from the crowds these days, because it's the only thing going on at the ACC.
All right, guys, so we'll keep you up to date on what's going on. The Raptors do play Real Madrid on October 8th. That's the first game of the preseason, and the first game is Halloween in Toronto. So if you haven't got your tickets, take a look to get your tickets for the NBA Toronto Raptors, and stay with us. We'll keep you updated with what's going on in Toronto and the NBA.